Is real estate overpriced? No, I believe that housing is going to continue appreciating into the future, and I'm going to provide 6 reasons as to why housing is not overpriced. Here's the important thing. I can predict the timing of the housing crash with 100% accuracy. Yes, I'm actually going to give you the month and date of the housing crash. And you might be wondering, how in the heck can anyone do that? Nobody's clairvoyant. Well, by the end of this video, I think it's going to be quite apparent to you as to why I can firmly say that with 100% conviction. Hi, I'm Keith. This is Get Rich Education. You know, last year I was talking about how the housing price run-up is sustainable and how it is going to continue.
Keith, from your analysis and looking at today's data and your analysis up until today, is there any reason to think that house prices, this price appreciation, could slow down over the next 12 months or even decrease in price? Any reason to think that?
I think it's likely that home price appreciation will continue, but the rate of appreciation will slow down. Here you can see a clip of me talking about that on television. That was last November. I was still saying as late as November why housing prices are going to continue to appreciate and why I continue to say that now. But let's get an update on this. How much more could they really appreciate? Year in and year out, it can get pretty tiring to hear your local real estate agents refrain of buy real estate. It's always a good time to buy. No, it's not always a good time to buy. For example, 2006 was not a good time to buy. I've been directly investing in real estate since 2002. Now, the right agent can be valuable, of course. I just use an agent to help transact the sale of an apartment building for me. So there's nothing wrong with agents. I just want to let you know that I am not geared to always cheerlead real estate. In fact, back in 2019 on the Get Rich Education podcast, and by the way, hopefully you're a listener to the Get Rich Education podcast. In 2019, what I was saying then is I don't really see what is going to make real estate appreciate beyond its meager 4% appreciation rate nationally, which is about what it was at that time. Well, no one could see the pandemic coming and how that changed almost everything. And after that, my outlook soon changed to inform the world as to why real estate was going to appreciate at a faster than historic appreciation rate like it has. And by the way, in the meantime, a number of my contemporaries said that there was going to be a housing price crash in 2021. That was wrong. Let's talk about 6 ways. Really, it's why today's real estate boom is quite different from the unsustainable housing price appreciation run-up from 15 years ago, and why that run-up was hollow, and why this one is different. And I think with that first of 6, you need to start with affordability. And affordability has 3 main components. Number 1 is the home price. Number 2 are the wages that are earned by that home buyer. And then the third are mortgage interest rates. Compared to the housing crash 15 years ago, homes are more affordable today. And you ought to be thinking, well, they better be more affordable because 15 years ago, there was a housing price crash. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that 15 years ago, mortgage interest rates were 6% plus. Today, they're about 4% or even a little bit lower. And most home buyers borrow. They don't pay all cash. So therefore, something like 80% of the cost of a home is tied up in that mortgage interest rate. That's why it matters so much. Wages are higher. And, you know, homeowners' stock portfolios have surged as well. The value of those is so much greater that they can afford a higher payment, though that portion might not be sustainable. And understand that home affordability could very well decline if mortgage interest rates go substantially higher and home prices continue to go higher. With what's happened in Ukraine in the short term, that's made more people rush into bonds, pushing down the yield on the 10-year T-note, and mortgage interest rates have come down a little bit over the last few weeks as well. But understand that over the long term, with the inflationary effects of the Russian invasion invasion of Ukraine, what that would tend to do with higher inflation is that there will be higher interest rates long term, since that is the tool used to tamp down on inflation. So over the longer term, interest rates could very well go higher. And let's take a look at this chart from Black Knight. Homes are more affordable today than they were during the housing crash 15 years ago. The monthly principal and interest payments as a percentage of income required to purchase the average priced home, and this is with that 20% down payment. They're still within the normal lending standard. And the second reason, let's look at those lending standards. The lending standards were dreadful 15 years ago.
My firm offers ninja loans. No income, no job. I just leave the income section blank if I want. Corporate doesn't care.
You didn't need any income. You didn't even need to have any job or have any assets in order to qualify for a loan, known as ninja loans, Ninja, no income, no job, or assets. How bad was it comparatively? Well, one way that you can look at that is leading up until the 2007 crash, the Federal Reserve tells us that the number of borrowers with sub 620 credit scores that were still able to get a mortgage loan was 5 times greater than it is now. So what's going on was nuts back then. Today, borrowers need more assets, fewer delinquencies, and a lengthier credit history than what they could get 15 years ago. The third reason that real estate is not overpriced and that housing values are sustainable now and into the near future is equity. Homeowners are sitting on record equity, the difference between the value of their home and how much is owed on the mortgage. See, if a financial challenge arises, homeowners want to protect that equity. 15 years ago, they could make a no money down payment. Today, they more often need to put 20% down into a property. So they're willing to protect that and not walk away from it. And then padding that is this record equity. This chart shows us how much that equity has run up in recent years. Right here, the average household with a mortgage on it, just those portion of homeowners with a mortgage, now has $200K plus of equity in it in the United States. That's a new record. In an emergency, they can avoid a foreclosure or a short sale. 15 years ago, oftentimes properties that had delinquent payers went into foreclosure or short sale. When they had to sell at a loss and sell for below market value, that acted as a comparable for other properties that were in the market, hence reducing their values. So homeowners don't have to sell at a loss if they get into trouble. They have equity. They don't have to do a foreclosure or short sale. And understand as well that this glut of equity from all these homeowners is what they have now. When they go look for a move-up home, they can just bowl over first-time homebuyers, because when they have all this equity, they could either pay all cash for a home, or if they can't quite do that because it's a move-up home, they can easily offer to pay substantially more than the appraised price. A first-time homeowner has a difficult ability to do that. This phenomenon of higher equity makes it a pretty good time to own rental properties, because when first-time homebuyers can't become first-time homebuyers because they get bowled over by all these incumbents with all this equity, what's that do to the wannabe first-time homebuyer? It keeps them in the renter pool. This is why we have a larger renter pool.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
How it started? With house price bidding wars. How it's going? Rental price bidding wars. Let's get back to the 6 big reasons about why housing is not overpriced. In fact, I expect it to continue to appreciate, though at a more modest rate than the 19 to 20% last year. And the fourth of 6 reasons is utility. And no, I'm not talking about things like trash or natural gas or electricity. I'm talking about the root meaning of the word utility. Utility in this sense means usefulness. Now, why would a borrower or a homeowner be willing to spend a greater proportion of income on a home today than they were 15 years ago, or even as recently as 2019? That's because a home has become more useful. Compared to just a couple or 3 years ago, a home is now more often where a homeowner not only lives and sleeps, but also where they might work with work from home trends and work out and homeschool and have a garden. People are more likely to want to be self-reliant with trends that have taken place. A home has greater usefulness or utility than any time in recent human history. Economists estimate that 3/4 of the increase in telework during COVID is going to continue later when we get into the pandemic stage of the disease, and the number of fully remote workers is expected to double. And a lot of employees that do return to offices aren't going to be obligated to go work in an office 5 days a week. They're oftentimes going to do a split between work and home. Twitter, in particular, if you work for them, they have gone so far as to just leave it completely up to you, whether you stay at home all week or choose to go into work part of the week or all week. The work from home trend has really increased the utility value of housing. In 20 years, people could be wearing VR equipment, virtual reality equipment, and never leave their home. I'm not so sure about that one. When you try to extrapolate a trend out that far, it's difficult to know whether it's really going to happen or not. In fact, by now, people thought that VR and AR trends would make more inroads in their life than they already are. So that's hanging out there. That could happen. I sure wouldn't guarantee it. Current trends already make working from home and the utility value of a home greater. The 5th of 6 reasons with why housing is not overpriced and should continue to appreciate are foreclosures. A foreclosure takes place when a borrower cannot make their mortgage payments and a bank, that lender, has to evict them and take possession of the property themselves. So as we take a look at this foreclosure rate chart here from Statista, you can see the foreclosure rates peaked at over 2% in 2009 and 2010, back during that housing price crash time. Back then, some in negative equity positions walked away from their homes. Again, if you didn't have any equity in it, it's pretty easy for you to walk away from it. And oftentimes they didn't have any down payments in the first place. And that's what led to that plethora of properties being listed at huge discounts, really lowering the value of all area homes, like I touched on earlier. Prior to the pandemic programs, you can see here as you look, there were fewer than 0.5% of new foreclosures per year in 2018 and 2019. Let's kind of discount, however, the values in 2020 and 2021, because we had something known as forbearance programs then, which are dwindling. And again, these people are typically equity rich. So I just wonder what anyone sees in the pre-COVID foreclosure numbers that make one think that it's going to spike now after these forbearance programs, and we have an unemployment rate that's below 4%. And in a lot of cases, you have even more jobs than you have people. Hey, go ahead and put a like on this if you like some of this material I'm dispensing. Hey, that's a pretty low cost of admission here, right? Just leave it a like on it. I'd really appreciate the like. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, I dispense real estate information all the time as we help you build real estate financial freedom, especially through rental properties. The 6th of 6 reasons, and this is really a big one. And come on, if you've been following me for a while, you knew I was going to say it, but we're going to talk about this 6th one in different terms than we do a lot of times, and that is supply. The astounding dearth of housing supply that we have today, which just incredibly seems to continue to dwindle ever lower. There aren't enough houses available, and this is not a good thing. This helps people homeless, but if you're buying a home or you own a home, it sure helps protect your value. On its basis, the price of most anything is dictated by demand and supply. Demand is higher with some of those work from home trends that I talked about earlier, and here the supply is lower. And this is not going to change anytime soon. Supply is an inelastic condition. It takes time to get builders in there, for them to get all these commodities shipped in, and for them to be assembled, and for the property to be finished. So from 2007 to 2010, there was an average supply of 8.5 months worth of available homes. That was a glut of properties, an oversupply. A gradual underbuilding trend for several years meant that by 2018, supply plummeted to a paltry 3.7 months. In 2019, it was down to 3 months. By 2020, just 1.8 months when we had some of those pandemic effects kicking in. At the end of last year, an astoundingly low 1.7 months of available housing supply. If 6 months is the balance point where supply and demand are in balance, we're at less than 1/3 of what's needed to supply the market. And now it is down to a 1.6 month supply of housing. So see, when you have a really low supply of housing, well, that increases the number of bidders proportionally to just that, say, one home that's for sale. When you have substantially more bidders for fewer homes, what does that do? That creates a bidding war, all these offers on one property, and that's what is expected to continue to support prices. Low supply fuels bidding wars. And shown another way, here we go. This is the active listing count of available homes. This is a chart that I've shown you before, but it's interesting to get the monthly updates on it as we move over time. The housing inventory, the active listing count here. And you'll note, referring back to what I discussed earlier in the video, this is why I have stated that the American housing crash has already happened. It is not a housing price crash. It is a housing supply crash, which is even worse. We're underhoused. It leads to homelessness. The crash in housing already occurred. As it shows in this chart, the inflection point was April of 2020. That is when this generation's housing crash occurred. It was not a price crash. It was a supply crash. Seasonally, we typically have a cresting of the available supply of homes, but in April of 2020, that's instead when we had a downturn. That's why that is the exact month and year that the American housing crash occurred. A supply crash. Well, here at GRE, what I do is connect you with reputable property providers. Some of them don't have supply right away. Others do have supply right now. And what makes the best rental properties is typically a property outside of your home state, where you have laws that tend to favor landlords more than tenants, and you have a high ratio of rent income to purchase price. Those places tend to be in the United States, Midwest, and South. And I buy from these providers myself. Oftentimes for a single family rental home, you can still buy these properties for under $300K, even under $250K, some of them new construction around those price points, oftentimes smaller properties that make the best rentals. In fact, we've been talking about real estate prices here. You know, when you're a real estate investor that buys property, oftentimes you don't even care with what happens to the price in the short or the intermediate term, because what you're doing is you're buying an income stream from a tenant. I connect you with all those providers at gremarketplace.com in these investor advantaged markets. You can just set up a free login and have the ability from there to connect with every single one of the providers in our network with rental property. Again, that's at gremarketplace.com. My name's Keith Weinhold. Thanks so much for being here, but you weren't here for me. You were here for you. We'll see you in the next video.